Hey, what you reading for?
A couple of weeks ago, I put out a video called Sci-Fi for Book Snobs. The premise, call me a book snob if you will, I have been called worse, but I have had some negative experiences with science fiction and some positive experiences too. So in that video, I shared my resistance to science fiction and the trauma that resistance comes from. I shared some of the characteristics of some sci-fi work that turns me off, as well as some sci-fi work that I've read that I really liked. And I feel that I have grown a lot recently, thanks especially to the positive vibes I've been getting from viewers and subscribers to this channel. And I felt that the time was right for me to face my resistance to this popular genre. So I asked viewers to recommend some science fiction books that would be likely to hit on a reader with specific sensibilities that I have. It turns out, when you ask sci-fi fans for recommendations, they will give you recommendations. I received many thoughtful and compelling book recommendations. I looked into each and every one. And in this video, I want to go through those with you. I also read 2 books based on viewer recommendations, and I have opinions. Was I able in 2 short weeks to overcome my hang-ups and reservations regarding science fiction? Or did my recent experiences only serve to reinforce the negative assumptions I had of this popular genre? Those are the questions that I will answer in this video. So go ahead and hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I'm going to run a short intro sequence featuring the music of the great American composer John Adams, and I will see you on the other side for my sci-fi reviews based on viewer recommendations. The book that was most frequently recommended, and by a wide margin, was The Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe. Now, I had never heard of this book or the author.
Shame!
This is a book that a lot of people like. It has an extremely high rating on Goodreads, 4.22 stars, which is really high for Goodreads. But it's also 960 pages. I'm just dipping my toes in the water, you know? And you guys want to throw me in the middle of the ocean. Oh, but Michael, the water is so much better in the middle of the ocean. Okay, yeah, maybe, right? But I'm not ready for that. Not just yet, in any case. It's like a vegetarian who wants to experience eating meat. So I would suggest maybe a pizza with some ham or pepperoni on it. You guys want to take them to the steakhouse. Hey, that's a terrible analogy, I realize, but you get what I'm going for. The Book of the New Sun is a 4-part series, so I could just read the first book, The Shadow of the Torturer, which is only 260 pages. But is it really a standalone? And it seems more like fantasy than science fiction. I don't know. But in any event, it is definitely on my radar now, so thank you for that. Another book that frequently came up was Dune by Frank Herbert. Now, funny enough, I had written a paragraph about Dune for the script for that last video, but for whatever reason, I forgot to record it. Basically, my thoughts on Dune are that I am sure that it's an amazing book. I mean, it's widely loved and probably deservedly so, I would think. But I'm also under the impression that it is heavy with political allegory And I am extremely resistant to politics. I don't want to hear about politics. I don't want to think about politics. I don't think I could handle even political allegory, at least not at this time in my life. That could change, maybe down the road, we'll see. It's also a 700-page epic, which I'm not sure is the right dip your toes into the water kind of book. But I'm sure that it's a phenomenal book nonetheless. It is on my radar, but I am not going to read Dune anytime soon. Maybe down the line, but not anytime soon. Also frequently recommended was Hyperion by Dan Simmons. Now, I've had one Dan Simmons experience in the past, and it wasn't a great experience, if I'm being honest. I read Carrion Comfort, which is a horror action hybrid. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. And I was kicking myself while reading it, because the book that everyone was telling me to read by Dan Simmons was The Terror. And for whatever reason, I didn't read The Terror. I chose Carrion Comfort. Which turns out wasn't the right choice. But not the first time in my life that I didn't make the right choice. So if I decide to give Dan Simmons a second chance, the book I'm probably going to read would be The Terror. And then we'll see after that. If I like The Terror, then yeah, Hyperion is on my radar. We'll see. Another book that was frequently recommended was The Affirmation by Christopher Priest. Again, I had never heard of this book or its author, but the premise sounds really cool. Partly a thriller, partly a haunting study of schizophrenia, it is the mark of one of Britain's finest novelists at the very height of his powers. I picked up a digital copy of this book. I have access to a really good digital library. Some of the books are in English, a lot of them are in French. So the copy I have of The Affirmation is not called The Affirmation. It is called La Fontaine Pétrifiante. I did not read it straight away, but I do look forward to reading it soon. Also frequently recommended, The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu. I am intrigued by this title. Firstly, it's from a Chinese writer. I have never read a Chinese writer.
Shame!
Also, a viewer commented, quote, I have no idea why someone would recommend The Three-Body Problem to you after watching your video. Lots of people really like it, but not for its prose or its characters. Far from it. It's a very divisive novel. If you do read it, please do a video review. Okay, so now I'm doubly intrigued. I have to read the book now, don't I? Another viewer favorite, Vert by Jeff Noon. Take a trip in a stranger's head. Travel rain-shot streets with a gang of hip malcontents, hooked on the most powerful drug you can imagine. The mysterious game cat says, be careful, be very careful. But Scribble isn't listening. He has to find his lost love. His journey is a mission to find Curious Yellow, the ultimate, perhaps even mythical vert feather. The synopsis reminds me of another sci-fi cyberpunk book I read a few years ago called Dr. Identity by Harlan Wilson. And Dr. Identity did not work on me. It's zany, but not for me and not in a fun way. It was like reading a cartoon. And from the synopsis, that's the vibe I'm getting from Vert. I could be completely wrong, but that's the vibe I'm getting from that, like reading a cartoon. I don't know, that's not for me. Incidentally, after posting that video 2 weeks ago, it occurred to me that there are loads of sci-fi books that I've read that I forgot to mention, like Dr. Identity, for example. Also, The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. The Day of the Triffids has been on my TBR for ages, going on 10 years now, seriously. I'll eventually get around to reading it, is what I've been saying for the past 10 years. Maybe I'll even read it this year. Some authors that were frequently mentioned, Octavia Butler and Angela Carter. And I agree, those are two authors I definitely need to check out. They are high on my list of authors I need to discover, and I need to do so relatively soon. Philip K. Dick came up many times, and I talked about Philip K. Dick in the video. I know that I did not read the best of what Philip K. Dick has to offer. I read one of his earlier books, The Solar Lottery, which I liked. I know that he's written better books than that, but I'm not going to read another book from him, at least not anytime soon. J.G. Ballard came up many times. I did not know that J.G. Ballard was a science fiction writer. A few years ago, I read Crash and loved Crash. I have been meaning to read more from J.G. Ballard. In fact, that is one of my reading goals for 2024. I have been reluctant to read another book from him, even though I had such a great experience with Crash. I think it's because whatever book I read from him next, it's highly unlikely that it's going to be able to live up to Crash. I mean, Crash was so unique and inventive and dark and perverse. Whatever book I read from J.G. Ballard next, it's bound to disappoint me in comparison. I don't know if that's true, but that's my thinking. That's why I've been resisting reading more from him. Because I want to avoid that disappointment. We'll talk more about J.G. Ballard later in this video. So I took all those wonderful, thoughtful, intriguing book recommendations and I logged on to my digital library to see what book or books I would test the waters with. Now, I picked up a copy of The Affirmation. I haven't cracked it open yet, but I look forward to doing so soon. Instead, I read The Invention of Morel by Adolfo Bioy Casares. What intrigued me about this book was, firstly, it's 100 pages, which is a great testing the waters size for a book. And secondly, it has a foreword by Jorge Luis Borges. I love Jorge Luis Borges, so a foreword from him is a huge endorsement. So if Jorge Luis Borges tells me that this is worth checking out, then this is something I need to check out. So, recommended by a viewer. It's only 100 pages and it has a foreword by Jorge Luis Borges. So, I dove in. A fugitive is on a deserted island and he comes across some people. So I guess it's not that deserted. But he comes across some people, some vacationers, and he becomes fascinated with them. That's all I will tell you about the plot because there is a mystery aspect to the novella. The reader is meant to wonder, who are these people and who is this protagonist and can I trust what he is telling me? And I don't want to spoil it for you. As far as my experience reading this book, I wasn't really into the mystery part, which is the first 2/3 of the book. There wasn't really anything particularly compelling about the prose, the setting, or the character to keep me going, if I'm being honest. So I wasn't really interested in the mystery. Once the final 30 pages of the novella, once we understand what is really happening, then I was compelled. I found it compelling because the protagonist makes a very interesting choice based on his obsession. And obsession, by the way, is a theme in literature that always works on me. And it worked on me here as well. So ultimately, on the whole, I get why people would like this book, this novella. I didn't hate it. I didn't really love it either. I mean, it's interesting enough. I gave it 3 stars. There was nothing in this book that reinforced or confirmed my hang-ups and my reservations about science fiction. But there was nothing that really converted me into the genre either. But I survived the experience, so that was good. And I followed that experience immediately with another science fiction book. I read High Rise by J.G. Ballard. Now, full disclosure, I had planned on reading High Rise in May, even before making that video a few weeks ago. I did not know that High Rise was a science fiction book. I was planning on going into it blind, which is essentially what I did. High Rise is essentially Lord of the Rings, but in a 40-story residential building, and replacing kids with business professionals. For me, the book does not rise to the heights achieved by Crash, and I didn't expect it to. The book is quite repetitive. It's only 200 pages, but it was a relatively slow read for me because of the repetitive nature of the story. And the prose, surprisingly, not that compelling. I didn't really like High Rise, but I feel that in reading it, I was able to overcome my fear of being disappointed by J.G. Ballard. I was disappointed, and it turns out it's no big deal. I recovered pretty much instantly, actually. So now that I've had one super great J.G. Ballard experience and one not so great experience, I feel like I need a third experience, right? That tiebreaker. The J.G. Ballard titles that viewers recommended were The Drowning World, Vermilion, and I'm forgetting one. The Crystal World. Now, I'd never heard of any of those titles, but one of those three I'm going to pick as my tiebreaker in the J.G. Ballard experiment. And I'll do that in some time in the coming months. So what's next in my testing the sci-fi waters journey? Well, I'm going to read The Affirmation by Christopher Priest, and probably The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Yu. We'll see. I'm trying to be slightly more spontaneous with my reads in 2024, slightly, but we'll see. So, as always, I look forward to connecting with you in the comments section. Hit those like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. And thank you for watching. I'll see you at the next video.